Awesome. Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm Stacy Hagenbaugh, and I am the director of the Lazarus Center here at Smith. And I'm delighted to welcome you to our Smith in a Virtual World panel. This is the first of a series of four that we are offering this year as an alternative to an annual event that we host called the Smith in the World Conference. So first and foremost, I want to welcome all of you, and you're a really wonderful, diverse group of people. We have obviously our current students and friends and community members, faculty, staff from here at Smith, but we also have a wonderful group of prospective students, families, and guardians that are participating today, as well as alumni who are engaged with the college. And community members who have supported our students through internships and community-based learning. So a really wonderful, diverse group of audience members. So thank you for joining us today. We're also recording it so that others who can't join us today will be able to hear from our students. So as I say, this is an adaptation of an event that we host every year called Smith in the World, which is a collaboration between the Lazarus Center and our Provost's office, our Dean of the College, and our Committee on Academic Priorities, which is a faculty body. And that event is designed to celebrate the really wonderful learning that happens when students leave campus. Through internships, through research that they do with other institutions and collaborators and scholars, through the community-based work that they do locally as well as in other parts of the country and globally, as well as the work that students do when they go abroad, through study abroad, through research abroad, and through their own travel experiences. This year, obviously, we had to adapt, and it's been a wonderful opportunity for us to work with students who, like us in the spring, had to really quickly figure out how they were going to make the most of a really complicated challenge. When we think about experiential learning, we think about being able to do something with your hands, with in a lab, with an audience, to engage them, to produce something that's physical, tangible. And these students really had to show a lot of resilience and determination and really working closely with people who they were committed to doing an in-person internship with, to how can we do this remotely, to how can I figure out how to find something that will be a good, robust experience and a good use of my time over the summer that I can do remotely and keep my work going nonetheless. And I have marveled at how our students have been able to do that. And so I was not willing to let go of the opportunity to pivot our own celebration and allow those really powerful, wonderful narratives of resilience to be heard. So that's what we're going to do today, and that's the goal of our series through interterm. Some ground rules. All of you are expert now at Zoomland. We're going to keep everybody's video and audio on mute. My colleague Patty is going to be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have questions, please feel free to put those there. And then once we're through the three presentations, we will open it up and she'll start fielding some of those questions. And obviously you can add to them at that point as well. So without further ado, we will get started. I'm joined today by three wonderful students, all of whom used Praxis funding. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Praxis funding supports unpaid internships anywhere in the world, though obviously this year they were remote, to allow students to gain experience in an industry or field of interest, even if those opportunities are unpaid. So Clarissa Po is a junior, and she did an internship at the Chester Theater Company. And next we have Elizabeth Walton, who is a senior, and she served as an associate editor of Sheesh magazine. And last but not least, we have Zoe Rayner, who is an Ada Comstock scholar and also a senior, who did an internship at the Worcester Museum of Art. And they have wonderful narratives, wonderful stories. So without further ado, let's start our panel with Clarissa.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about my virtual theater internship that I had at Chester Theater Company. Um, so just to introduce myself, uh, my name is Clarissa Po, she, her pronouns. I am a junior and a theater major and film and media studies minor, and I'm currently residing in New Jersey, and that's where I was during my internship this summer. So as I mentioned before, I interned at Chester Theater Company. Chester Theater Company is located in the Berkshires, and to put it in their words, Chester Theater Company produces contemporary professional equity theater in an intimate setting, creating community and offering audiences fresh perspectives on vital issues. So they usually do this through a 4-show season, but this summer it turned into a series of talkbacks about different online performances and conversations with theater professionals. And this was all done in an effort to really focus on audience engagement after they had to cancel their 2020 season. So I learned about this opportunity through Daniel Kramer, who is the producing artistic director of Chester and also my major advisor, and Tara Franklin, who's the associate artistic director and teaches acting here at Smith. So I originally applied for an artistic administration internship, which would have had me dealing with a lot more production management tasks. But after the shutdowns, I was offered a role as a remote programming intern. And I'll talk a little bit about what that looked like in the beginning. So these were some of my weekly tasks. So in staff meetings, I was able to each week take part in and observe the necessary conversations and tasks that go into running a theater company. And then I also researched available online performances that we could use as talkback content. And so you'll see a little spreadsheet in the top left corner of all of the online free content that I was able to find online. I also sorted through script submissions to help find plays that we could hopefully produce in the future. Um, I also did a lot of research into Zoom. This was really early on into understanding all the capabilities of Zoom. So I spent a lot of time at the Zoom help website and finding out what capabilities there were and how we could use them. And then also I did a lot of video editing of our recordings that we had of conversations with critics and the COVID Theater Workshop for our YouTube. And I also created a graphic for the introductory events. So you'll see that in the middle there. So one thing I found really interesting about the experience was seeing how we reacted to the real world events. So one thing with the George Floyd event that occurred, after that, we discussed the contents of Dear White American Theater, which was a list of demands created by BIPOC theater makers. And in our staff meetings, we talked a lot about how we could implement those demands. And we also chose Passover, Spike Lee's film of Antoinette Nwandu's play, as talkback viewing content. And this play explores topics of systemic racism and police brutality. Highly recommend it. It's available on Amazon Prime. And finally, this event really played a huge role in our casting decisions for our virtual performance of the story of King Lear, which we felt was really important that we had that representation. So that brings us to the story of King Lear, which was our end of season one performance that we put together. And our goal in this production was to capture the essence of live theater in a digital format. And this is really hard to do when you have a screen dividing you and your audience. So these are a couple things that we found in helping facilitate that. So first, we had to really embrace the hybridity of film and theater techniques. For example, we used a lot of storyboarding for planning the production, which is typically exclusive to film and not so much live theater. We also were able to play with new abilities. For example, we would have one actor play two characters in one scene and also at times narrate, and that would be very hard to do on a live stage. And then finally, we played a lot with variation in camera positioning. we found that there's a lot you can do with just sitting in front of your camera and looking at it in different ways. For example, there's a huge difference if I look directly at the camera, above it, below it, or like anywhere else in the room. So these are just a couple of the steps that I took in helping to put this show together. As I mentioned before, camera blocking. We determined that actors would look into the camera when they were narrating scenes and slightly below when acting in it. And then storyboarding again. So I would storyboard the entire show frame by frame, and you'll see a little bit of what that looked like later. I also just sort out entrance order. So for Zoom, at least at that time, which was a couple months ago, you had to enter in a specific order to put your video box in the right place. So I had to plan the order of the actors' entrances, of turning on their camera for each scene. For video recordings, as I mentioned before, we had scenes where actors play two characters. And to do that, I had them pre-record those scenes so that I could play them back to them and they could really have a dialogue with themselves. And then for box dimensions, I had to figure out in the post-production editing dimensions of how big, how small, where on the screen we wanted each actor's box to go in a way that was most aesthetically pleasing and functional for us. I also basically created the schedule and checklist for all the scenes and shots on shooting day. And finally, I did a lot of research into the best way to show this project to our audience. That ended up being YouTube Premiere, which was, we found the best for creating a live event for that us and our audience could take part in together. So how did I do this? First, a lot of test runs. You'll see in this little video here, I made a mistake in forgetting to film one of our double actors, but a lot of these runs that we did in rehearsal really helped in making sure what we had to do in the real shooting day and what to look out for. I also did a lot of YouTube tutorials, and then I was also fortunate enough to be signed up for a one-week workshop on virtual theater that gave me some tips and tricks. And then finally, I researched a lot into the best editing method for me, which ended up being DaVinci Resolve, mostly because it was free to download. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to be put in connection with another video editor that had worked on online productions before, and he gave me some tips and tricks as well. So here is basically the breakdown in some parts of what went into creating the scene. So in the top left corner, you'll see the storyboard for how we wanted the final product to look. And then right below that is sort of just a visualization of what we would actually see in Zoom while we were filming, because Zoom doesn't do that pyramid shape naturally. Then in the middle top, there is a GarageBand project that I used to split up the character dialogue when shooting double scenes, and I would mute certain characters depending on what we were shooting, and that way the actors could really hear themselves as the other character when they were shooting a scene. On the bottom, you'll see a breakdown of all the scenes and what they consisted of. For example, which actors were in them, and if they had a double scene that we had to shoot 2 times. And then finally on the right, you'll see the final product of this scene. And this is just one of the many scenes that went into the show. And then finally, there we go. So this was my takeaway from my experience. So in the short term, hopefully, I've been able to share a lot of what I learned over the summer with my fellow students at Smith and utilize these skills in various Smith productions. I was the stage manager for the new play reading series. I edited for the Amplifier project this fall, which is still online if you want to check that out. And I'm currently working on Julius Caesar as an assistant stage manager and video editor. And in the long term, I really loved being involved in something from start to finish and having my input really affect the creative arc of that project. And that has really motivated me to hopefully pursue something in producing in the future. So yeah, I'm just so thankful for my experience at Chester this summer, and thank you for having me.
really fantastic. Clarissa, thank you so much. I know we've had a few folks join since we started, so we are keeping questions to the end, but if you have questions, pop them into the chat and Patty will keep an eye on those. Once we're done with our panelists, we will start in with question and answer. So next we have Elizabeth Walton, who's going to talk about her experience at Sheesh Magazine.
Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. I just need to share my screen really quick and we'll get things going. Is that good? Everyone can see it well? Make sure there's no visibility. Okay, great, thank you. So hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth. As you know, I'm a current senior at Smith and I'll be discussing my summer experience working as an associate editor for a small independent digital magazine called Sheesh. Sheesh was established in February 2020, so we're coming on our 1-year anniversary this year in Southern California, and with the goal of connecting its audience with young and influential individuals in music, art, fashion, and media. Sheesh currently has around 8 staff members, including myself, in addition to the 2 editors-in-chief of the magazine, when we're all in charge of producing articles on a bi-weekly basis in order to create content and engage with our audiences. I was lucky enough to find Sheesh during this crazy time and during the pandemic by looking at, I found them through Instagram actually. And they had just started their magazine, were looking for writers and they were looking for, they had an internship opening and application. So I applied through Instagram through them. And that is how I was able to land my position as an associate editor and writer for them during my time this past spring, this past fall and during the summer. During my time at Sheesh, I was responsible for producing around 3 to 4 articles a month, which were focusing on interview-driven pieces. I also peer edited other articles and reviewed them, as well as developing media strategy with the 2 founding editors of the magazine. The aim of Sheesh magazine from its inception was to spotlight and cater to young creatives within Generation Z, so my generation, and a little bit younger than me, myself, and a bit older as well, in order to provide a platform for them to, for our audience and these creatives to connect on together, and for us to connect with them and provide them with a spotlight and a platform to get their work out, or just to highlight, the great things that they were able to do and achieve also during COVID and before and after. So on this slide, you will see 2 screenshots of the articles I have written thus far for Sheesh. They're 2 of my proudest ones because I got to interview some really amazing people. During my time writing and working for Sheesh, it has enabled me to meet and interview a variety of musicians, designers, artists, and photographers that I have been a long fan of or was recently introduced to, while allowing myself to introduce them to a wider audience via Sheesh as well, which was just a wonderful bonus. My most significant experiences working under Sheesh have been conducting these interviews and developing my articles for publication. I've been able to meet and have thoughtful conversations with a variety of individuals with diverse backgrounds and experiences, which have only enriched my time as an associate editor for the magazine and enriched the publications that we were able to publish and produce via Sheesh. In addition to my interviews, the ability to connect with my fellow staff writers and editors has also fostered a wonderful sense of community and allowed us to connect and become friends virtually. So that was, this time of COVID and social distancing, it was a very nice bonus to connect. We have staff writers who are based in California, others in New York, one's even in Singapore. So it's just really wonderful to connect with one another in that way and produce these articles. The majority of my work and that of the publications was and is conducted in a virtual manner. Our meetings and interviews and communications are all conducted via Zoom calls, as I'm sure all of you have to do as well, emails, group chats, and social media platforms. This has afforded us a greater opportunity in communicating with potential interviewees while ensuring we are up to date with the latest technological tools in order to connect with Sheesh's audience via social media, as that is our main platform that we use to advertise and to receive a wider audience. My experience at Sheesh and the transitioning, working in a virtual manner through COVID has really impacted my career goals. and prompted me to pursue a career in writing and journalism, and hopefully a master's in journalism after I graduate from Smith. But so we'll see how that goes. As for working under Sheesh and working in this time, it really showed what prompted me to want to pursue a degree in journalism is also because of the changing nature of writing and journalism now due to COVID. I'm sure, as you all know, COVID has accelerated a lot of steps that were bound to happen in increments, but just made it all happen in, in span of 6 months of how the workforce is changing. And it's incredibly true, and more so for the creative industry and the arts, and within journalism as well, because you have to be able to not only produce and edit and write articles, but you should be able to have the skills to edit do video editing, to have social media strategy, content strategy, copywriting, in order to really give yourself an edge, or just to be able to get your content out there and to be appreciated by your audience that you wish to target, and also provide a platform for these artists who have also gone through a horrible time during COVID. For some have been able to adapt easily, others have not, but just provide a wonderful environment to get people to know them and to understand what they're doing and what their work and how they wish to impact, how their experiences impact their work, which has been really beneficial. And one of the great things about why I love, why I wish to pursue journalism and writing. Well, that's all. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you.
Oh, so fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay, so again, we've had a few people who have joined, so welcome. And we are going to have one more presenter, and then we'll open it up for question and answers. But again, in the meantime, if you have questions, pop them into the chat, and we will get to them momentarily. So last but not least, our final presenter today is Zoe Rayner, and I will hand it over to her.
Great, thank you so much. Let me just pull up my presentation. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Zoe. I'm an ADA here at Smith, and this is my last 2 semesters to go, so I'm a senior now. I'm an art history major and Italian studies minor, and over the summer I got to do an internship at the Worcester Art Museum, which is in Worcester, Massachusetts. Okay, so just a little context on the museum itself. It was founded in 1896, and it has a really massive collection, kind of given the relatively small area that it's in. They have about 38,000 objects from all around the world, and it covers from, I think, 3000 BC, basically antiquities up to contemporary art. So there's a lot of breadth and depth to the collection that they have. And specifically within the museum, I was working with their Higgins collection of arms and armory, which used to belong to a separate museum in Worcester, the Higgins Armory Museum, and that was kind of folded into the Worcester Art Museum in 2013. And so within that collection, there's, I think, around 1,500 objects. So it's actually the second largest collection of arms and armor in the United States, which is really exciting. And this was a facet of art history that I knew nothing about. I'm not like a specialist in arms and armor or anything like that, but I've always been really interested in medieval and Renaissance art, and especially European and Italian art, and had some opportunities to live in Italy before. So I've just always been really fascinated by that specific art history, and they happen to have a really extensive collection of Italian objects. So that was kind of what piqued my interest about this internship. And I also had sort of just come to the realization that I wanted to work in museums when I applied for this. So I was really just looking for any opportunity that was fairly local that could give me a chance to see sort of the inner workings and to start to think about what I might want to do in the museum world. And these are just pictures of the museum and the collection. So yeah, initially, obviously it would have been in person, but due to COVID, they had to transition to remote. And I was fortunate enough that they already had 2 other interns who had been working with them. So they'd kind of already figured out or done the groundwork for how to become remote at that point. So there were definitely some downsides, of course. I get really excited about like working with actual objects. So of course we weren't allowed to go into the museum and we couldn't have any like physical contact with any of these things, but they really made a huge effort to make up for that. And I think the biggest, not the biggest, but one of the bigger takeaways from that was the kind of community building that they did to make sure that myself and the other interns and just the wider museum staff in general felt that they were still part of a community and that we kind of had the resources and the support that we needed. So that was great. Yeah, so I'll give a little overview of what I worked on. Again, we couldn't work with the actual objects, and I'm not entirely sure what I would have been doing if this were in person, because COVID happened pretty much right when I was accepted for this. So they pivoted pretty heavily to focusing on social media and basically trying to keep their community engaged in the museum while they were closed. So one of the biggest tasks that I helped work on was creating digital content for their social media, which was mainly Facebook and Instagram. So a lot of that was doing kind of weekly, like every few days, posts on objects within the collection, collaborating with other galleries and other collections within the museum to kind of, I don't know, cross-pollinate and keep people engaged in that way. And we also started making educational videos, which ended up becoming the bulk of the work that I was doing. And that was another kind of fun learning curve. I've never edited videos before, so we learned how to write scripts and how to kind of come up with like fun ideas that would keep people engaged. And again, since we couldn't have access to the actual collection where we might have previously been able to videotape things, we kind of had to rely on photographs, but thankfully they have a really extensive online collection. So we made use of that pretty extensively. Yeah, we would record the scripts, we would edit them, put them together. And it was a really collaborative process as well. Again, I was working with 2 other interns, so there was a lot of, I might record it, someone else might find the materials. And I think we put together maybe 15 by the time I was done. So it was pretty exciting. And that was a first for the Higgins collection in terms of getting a YouTube channel. So that was fun to be a part of that preliminary project. I also helped make some surveys, again, as part of keeping the community engaged. And a big part of this was they're planning on creating a new gallery space for this collection, and that'll be opening in a couple of years. And sort of in this early phase, they wanted to see what the community felt was important and how they would most want to engage with the collection in a new gallery space. Again, also carried out some object research and then participated in weekly meetings with a variety of staff, which was also a really great way just to hear perspectives from other people, kind of people with different roles than I might have previously been considering working in a museum, but just kind of getting that exposure to a wide variety of the museum world was really super valuable. So I was going to show one of these little videos that we made, but I just realized that I did not I didn't connect the audio, so you wouldn't be able to hear it, but I can skim, I guess, and just kind of show you what we did. We would kind of find a good quality image like this one, which was super high res. And then obviously there's a voiceover of the background that you can't hear, but explaining the history of this. We'd add sound effects into it and just kind of bring people through, in this case, the painting, and kind of showing them what the painting is referring to and trying to make it fun and engaging and also good for a variety of audiences. So I apologize for not connecting the audio. And then, like I said, it was all remote, but everyone I was working with on this small team lived in Massachusetts, so we got to have a socially distanced hangout in someone's backyard, which was also really fun because, as I'm sure you all know by now, it's weird to only meet people on Zoom. So it was really valuable to actually get to hang out in person a little bit. Yeah, so before I get to the super end, I guess just to wrap up, this was such an incredibly valuable experience, and I really don't feel like I missed out on too much given that it was remote. Again, the people I was working with made a huge effort to supplement that and to just make sure that we as interns were as engaged as we possibly could. Yeah, so it basically just reaffirmed my passion for museums and wanting to continue exploring that professional space. I think I probably won't specialize in arms and armor, but I definitely want to start exploring other time periods and other types of objects and just keep looking for opportunities like this one. Hopefully maybe abroad someday when COVID is no longer as much of an issue. So yeah, here's just some information, their website, the link to their internships page, and if anyone has questions after this, please feel free to email me. I'd be happy to help out. So thank you so much for listening.
Just fantastic. What three fabulous human beings. You guys are so wonderful. So thank you. We're obviously, as I say, we've had a few folks hop in. We have recorded this in case you hopped in late and want to see it in its entirety. That will be available to you. And we are going to open up for questions now. But I have a question for our panelists before we hop in. You know, obviously your organizations and the work that you did had to lean into adapting. Elizabeth, you touched on this a little bit in terms of when you were talking about how journalism has had to move at a quicker pace than it might have otherwise. But it's a term that I call sticky. What is sticky in that you've noticed through these internships that your organizations will keep going forward? What have been the lessons learned of what has worked well in a remote environment that these organizations want to keep going forward to keep the work of their organizations connected to a broader audience?
Well, I'll go ahead and answer this one first, Sheesh, or at least for the digital writing. Well, I love that you have the term sticky, but when it comes to, I believe what we saw through Sheesh and what we saw through our interviewing process and our writing process and our engagement numbers as well through our website and through our social media is that the future, at least of digital marketing and digital publications, will be to focus on social media to engage with the audience and to, you know, cater to our audiences. So we have through Sheesh, you know, an Instagram, a TikTok, we have Twitter, you know, a Pinterest as well, to really widen our age demographics as well, and to be able to touch our readership just not in North America, in South America, in Europe, in Asia, and in Australia, and in Africa as well. Of course, it is all written in English, so that is it's mainly for English speakers and readers. But I would say, you know, we missed the ability to have in-person interviews. Like if you were able to meet with your interviewee in California, if you lived in California, but because of COVID, just out of convenience, it is so much easier to just have these Zoom calls. So Zoom is definitely going to be a staple. We have our emails where our editors-in-chief send out weekly emails to just update everyone on, you know, what the next steps are on article ideas, article pitches, numbers that we have received from the website and social media and engagement wise, any feedback we receive, any pointers as well. So that has streamlined our communication and just made it more direct. So I would say what really sticking is, you know, emails, Zoom calls, being able to Skype with individuals, just find ways, if like Zoom doesn't work for somebody, find a way to Skype or answer questions in a digital format. So really it's just driving home technology is the way that we're able to connect with our audiences and be able to survive as well.
Great. Clarissa or Zoe, anything you'd want to add?
Well, I think for us, the main thing that really stuck that's going to stick is that location, it wasn't an obstacle with Zoom. So like one of our actors for Lear was in California, and we had conversations with people in Chicago and New York and even London. So I think knowing that we now have this tool to use to be able to reach out and talk to people that aren't in Massachusetts or like right directly in the Berkshire area is something that will continue to be utilized for the future.
Yeah, like Clarissa and Elizabeth said, I think for us as well, it was really the technology part that would probably become a more permanent feature of what the museum was doing. And I think a lot of that also fed into kind of thinking about accessibility and equity as well, because just realizing that even in a non-pandemic time, a lot of people couldn't or don't have access to their collection for various reasons. So just finding ways to create a sort of digital online space that is much more accessible and maybe can help support like teachers or schools, especially with the possibility of other situations arising where the museum might have to close, just having more of a foundation, a digital foundation in place that they can use for situations like this.
Yeah, super. Another question. So this has all been moving so quickly between the spring and the pivot to your classes to moving through the summer. When you look in the rear view mirror and you're able to hit the pause button, what do you know about yourself now that you didn't before?
I'll answer this one. Okay. Again, I would say that via this internship, and I continue to still work for them, which I'm very grateful for, and it's a wonderful experience, that I, in this time of reflection, had a lot more time to think and evaluate what I want to do with my career and my writing skills. So it really just helped me foster my writing skills, my editing skills, and being able to find ways to connect with other people, regardless of time zones, even sometimes language barriers, and just being able to be confident in my writing skills and publication skills, and to really help champion these creatives as much as possible, and in what capacity I could with my articles and via Sheesh. I hope that answered your question.
Zoe or Clarissa, anything else you want to add?
Well, I think before I started this internship, my idea of like what I wanted to do in theater specifically was a little vague, and I knew I liked management, I knew I liked organization, but I think this opportunity really allowed me to see that I had the ability to really lead a project in a way and help in facilitating different problems and troubleshooting, and also having my voice affect not just the processes of how things go along, but also, like I said before, like the creative arc and creative vision, and having that impact the content and creation of the shows and stories that were taking place.
Yeah, for me, I think it made me feel a lot more capable of being able to adapt to things, I guess, on the fly. Again, while I was there, the museum was still really working through not just how to make the internship remote, but how to function as a museum in a remote space. So everyone was kind of figuring it out as they went along. And I think being a part of that process and realizing kind of how much creativity can come out of situations like that was really enlightening, and gave me a lot of confidence that I could do that again, I guess, in another situation.
Super. A question from one of our participants. Did the organizations that you work with consider the changes and adaptations that they had to make with COVID productive, or were they just doing this just to kind of keep things going?
Well, I think for us, as a theater company, the goal you want to put on shows, you want to put on live theater. So this past summer was, I think more of like keeping afloat, doing what we can under the circumstances. But yeah, we really try to keep what we were doing along the same vein of the general goal of the theater is, which is to connect with the audience and have special conversations about the stories that were taking place and putting out there. And I think while we weren't able to put on as many shows as we would have typically liked to, we were still able to have that important connection.
Zoe or Elizabeth, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say, at least for Sheesh, this, just the nature of Sheesh as a digital and independent publication, it was always going to be through social media or through the internet, or websites, as a form of communication and to maintain itself. We don't publish, we don't have any print of our articles, so it's always going to be on a website in digital format. So if anything, during this COVID time, it was more of just a kind of a refining the process of how we want to, pursue our social media strategy, who we want to interview, how we want our articles to appear in the editorial format, online and digitally, and how to engage with our audience and receive a wider viewership and readership. So, we did accommodate, and of course, we're understanding, to different time zones, because we're also students at the same time. The majority is a student-run independent magazine. We're all still white. We're in our 20s or in 18, 19, and still in university. So we had to, juggle time and have time management skills with that. But yeah, it wasn't more of just, I guess, as you said, as a maintaining. It was always just going to be this way for Sheesh, at least. So it was really more of a refinement process for us. And just analyzing our next steps for the futures and post-COVID, if maybe we could have, I think, more of an in-person interview process if it's possible, once COVID is taken care of. But it doesn't look like it, because it's just really, really convenient to be able to do these interviews via Zoom, especially when you're interviewing someone who lives in London and you're on the East Coast. It's just so convenient. But yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I think for Worcester Art Museum, this was like an opportunity for them to start realizing how they could better incorporate like the digital world into the work they were doing, and to see that as like a way to build community and not like as a second best option to in person. And I think as well, like I said, for the specific collection that I was working with, they're planning this new gallery space, and normally they try to solicit ideas and feedback from people in person, but we ended up sending out a survey that got 400 responses just completely digitally. So that was a really exciting, and I think reaffirmed the realization there that you can have just as broad a reach online if you kind of know how to use it correctly and keep people engaged. So yeah, I think they probably see it as like a permanent addition to how they work rather than a sort of temporary Band-Aid.
Really fantastic. We have 2 additional questions that have come in. How did you all go about finding your internships? And what advice do you have for other smithies about doing an internship remotely?
I can go first. I basically just did a big Google search for museum internships. There are some pages, and if anyone has questions, you can email me. I think I can find those, but there are some specific pages that list museum internships. So I probably found some of that. And I was also at the time wanting to be local to Massachusetts. So I kind of just limited my search basically to Massachusetts museums and would go to their websites, and typically at the bottom of the page, they have like a jobs and internships tab. So it didn't take too long, I guess, to like come up with a good list of ones that I wanted to apply to. And then I think the second part of the question was, would you mind repeating it? I'm sorry, transitioning to remote, was that?
Yeah, what's your, what advice do you have for other smithies about doing an internship remotely?
Sure. Yeah, I think just go into it knowing that it might be different from the experience that you would have first wanted or expected, but that doesn't mean that it won't be just as valuable. And especially, I really lucked out with the people that I was working with, and they made such a huge effort to make us feel included and that we were as much a part of the museum community as if we worked there full time. And I think, again, like most people in situations like that who are offering these internships, they really want students to feel excited and passionate about what they're doing. So I think even if you do get something remote, the organization will kind of do their best to make it as fruitful as possible.
I'll go ahead. As for finding my internship, I found it via Instagram. As I briefly mentioned, I was following Sheesh for since February, since it first came out, like a couple months after, and through their Instagram stories, I was able to apply to their internship and writing application and become a staff writer and then associate editor for them. So that's how I was able to find it. And I was looking for writing internships at that point through social media, on LinkedIn, just also doing general searches and publications that I was interested in writing for and looking on their websites to see, if you go at the very bottom, you'll find a careers, right? Or contact us. And sometimes they'll have on the contact list, if you're interested, email us X, Y, and Z, or here are some career openings that are open and to find internships. I was also looking job-wise to kind of see what I have when I graduate. But yeah, so that's how I found it. And I also think with a lot of these independent and digital publications, social media is a new platform where you'll be able to find internships and be able to find writing applications or to apply for them. As for doing virtual internships, I think you should go into it like it's like any other normal internship, regardless of the situation. You always make the most out of any experience that you can. And I think with these virtual internships, at times it can be you get Zoom fatigue, you get exhausted having to constantly reply back through emails or messages, and sometimes people don't respond right away. I think you just have to be understanding to and forgiving of yourself and the situation, but also that this is going to be the new normal to an extent. So just try and find different ways that you can look forward to doing your internship virtually. And I would also with Sheesh, I've pitched myself in multiple ways to I want this article to be written, I really want to do this, or can I help in this manner, to kind of give yourself more responsibility, or just more that you feel that you're contributing more if you would like to. But yeah, for virtual internships, if you've had experience having a job or having an internship in person, I would say it's exactly the same doing it virtually. You just have to modify your communication and how you communicate, but you should still go in with the same mentality. And you can always find, I was able to actually make a couple great friends through the staff writers via Sheesh, which I would not have expected. So it's always give or take, and just depending on your situation.
Yeah, so I learned about my internship basically by going to my major advisor Daniel's office and being like, I need help finding summer internships. Can you help me? He gave me a bunch of advice on that, but then he was like, you can apply for my theater company. And I was like, oh. So that was really nice to, that's one of the reasons that really attracted me to Chester, was to be able to strengthen my relationship with mentors that I had already had at Smith. And yeah, for virtual theater, basically what everyone else said already, I'll repeat that. And I think just for anything virtual, creating some sort of routine really helps. Basically, I know that for me, with the Zoom fatigue and everything, just like going out for a walk once a day, and especially because it was summer, that was helpful, really helped with creating some sort of world outside of just my computer. And I think really just keeping communication open and constant was really important, because I think it's really easy to, at least for me, the only really required thing that I had was my weekly Monday morning staff meeting, but it was really useful to constantly be texting or emailing my supervisors or my fellow intern, and that really kept that community going and made it more than just the work, and actually was able to form relationships even though we weren't seeing one another. Yeah.
Any other thoughts from panelists? Okay, I think we have gone through the questions that are in our chat. Any last minute questions that folks have out there for our panelists? Okay, so you guys are amazing. I'm delighted that you've been willing to participate and share these really incredible experiences that you've had. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. As I say, this is recorded, so we will make it available for you if you were only able to see part of it. This is the first of a series of 4. Our next session is coming up on January 22nd, and that panel will focus on students who had internships in the nonprofit arena, and we have a really wonderful lineup of students for that particular session. So we will let you know about that. And I hope you have a wonderful, restful weekend. Stay healthy, safe, and well. And we will see you on hopefully our next event in January. And thank you.